At some point, I'd really like to write a book, The Gospel According to the Princess Bride. That wonderful 1980s movie, which, like The Godfather, is an encyclopedia of all human knowledge and whose quotes can be used for just about any occasion. As I encountered the readings for this week, I was driven to Inigo Montoya's pronouncement from the top of the cliffs of insanity. He's stuck there, waiting for the man in black to scale the rest of the cliff so they can have a sword fight. And Inigo, bent on revenge, is impatient. And he just mutters under his breath, "I hate waiting." The letter to James encourages us this morning to be patient. And this is the same letter writer who told us before, faith without good works is dead. Faith is moving. Faith is impatient. But towards the end of the letter, the writer tells us, be patient. And all I can do is go, I hate waiting. Be patient. Faith without works is dead. But in the light of what God is doing in the world, we are encouraged to be patient. Which isn't necessarily waiting. In a world where we are rightfully impatient with the world, God calls us to cultivate the virtue of true patience, a spirit of faithful action, of preparation, and joy. We are rightfully impatient. There is, if you have anything resembling the moral thermostat in your soul that flips when you see injustice or pain or cruelty, you are impatient. We are impatient with the world. We are impatient with God. We are impatient with ourselves. We're impatient, and rightfully so, with this world. Just last night, another episode, as America is wont to have, of gun violence at Brown University. And this is on top of just the violence we've become accustomed to, whether it's in the Holy Land or South Sudan or Ukraine or beyond. I hate that song from, what's his name? Oh yeah, John Mayer. Waiting on a world to change. As if you've got nothing to do with it. As if you just sit passively while the world eventually rights itself of its own volition. The world is stuck in hate and pain. And if some of us are a little impatient with that, we can be forgiven. Psalm 146, the verses we read as our response this morning, eliminate the first 3 verses. Rightfully so. It wants to push you toward, this Lord who comes and grants righteousness and the peace that we've all been longing for. It skips kind of the critique at the very beginning. Put no trust in rulers in whom there is no help. A little negative for Yaudete Sunday. But we're impatient with the powers that be that ignore the pain of the people. We're impatient, and rightfully so, for those rulers in soft robes. We're impatient with God. Isaiah describes the longing of the people for this time of peace. They know oppression intimately, having been oppressed by every passing empire in the Holy Land. And yet they hope for this place, this time when predation and pain and suffering are gone, and joy and peace and love and God's grace reign. And we can be forgiving for wondering what's taking God so long. We stand on the mountaintop waiting for God, saying, I hate waiting. But I wonder if our impatience with the world and with God rests or is connected to an impatience with ourselves. We are wandering in the wilderness, like those people, like the Israelites, like those people who happened upon John's ministry. We're wandering out there and wondering what it's going to take for the next chapter, the better times, because we're told it gets better. And we're wondering what it is that we have to do to get to that. We're impatient with struggle with God, with ourselves. We're tired. We hate waiting. But I think this misunderstands real patience. We're Episcopalians, and we love and we borrow from that ancient concept of the via media, the middle way. For some, this means just compromise. Let's, you say this and I say this. Let's meet in the middle. That's not what it is. It's a transcendent way, not just a middle way. Because virtue is usually a mean between two vices. That's what Aristotle said, and that's what the church doctors of the church, hit upon. If you're looking for a Christian practice, it's usually this transcendent way past two vices. And we tend to contrast patience with impatience. You can either wait or you can't. Hermann Hesse in his Siddhartha, created this Buddha who was capable of three things. He could think, he could wait, he could fast. Those were his skills. Waiting was important. But is it really waiting? Because patience is not this contrast between patience and impatience around your ability to wait. It's actually a mean between two extremes, between rashness and apathy. If you have too little patience, you act in ways that are unconsidered and unhelpful and unloving. In the impulse to do something, anything, you do anything. But on the other hand, we have apathy. We don't do anything. We wait and do nothing and miss the moment for faithful action. There is something in the middle which is true patience, which is a spirit of faithful action, preparation, and joy. We are far more powerful than we think. God, who has intervened in our lives, has prepared in our hearts that highway and allows us to intervene in the world. It's true that we can't control everything. And volumes of self-help books have been, those things beyond your control that you can't take care of, that you can't do. Put those aside. I encourage you not to put them aside, not just yet. That's apathy. You can influence things even if you can't control them. The little actions that we take in these pews, in those streets, add up. The princes of this world answer to God and to each of us. And we can put them and our soft robes to account. Our little faithful actions in the direction of love and grace matter. And we shouldn't, in the face of so much that is wrong with the world, lose faith and become apathetic. Remember, virtue is not only finding that middle, but deciding, considering how hard it is to find that middle, on which side you're going to screw up. You're not going to make the middle. So decide right now on which side you're going to fall. Will you be apathetic in the face of so much that's wrong? Or will you take action? And what kind of actions ought we take? Well, God encourages us to prepare the way. There's a highway to be built. God has intervened in our lives. That was the advent of the human heart. And while we rehearse the arrival of Jesus Christ, we not only wait, but prepare. We're laying the groundwork for what's next. God has intervened in our lives, and so we prepare a highway so that God can continue God's intervention out into the world. And we rejoice, finally, taking away that impatience of ourselves, we cultivate the joy of knowing what God has done in our lives. Jesus says, what did you hope to find out there in the wilderness with John? Did you want the reeds, the wilderness? Were you apathetically just taking in the sights? No. Were you looking for people in soft robes to take huge and dramatic action? No, not quite, although that would be nice. No, you were looking for a prophet. You were looking for the truth. And each one of us should be prepared to tell the truth of how God has intervened in our lives, not only to give us strength for the journey ahead, for the faithful actions that are required in the world, but to give other people joy, to lay down that highway outside of this place and prepare the way for God to intervene in everything else. God is the agent of our religion. It is God who is bringing peace and grace and understanding and love to this world. And we merely participate in it. We prepare the way for it. And we rejoice in the ways that God has already done that and will continue to do that. Our patience goes beyond, the simple patience and impatience. It's a spirit of faithful action, of preparation and love and grace. Laying aside our impatience with the world and God and ourselves to witness God's true arrival in our lives and in the life of the world. We are rightfully impatient with the world, with God, and ourselves. There is too much that is wrong with this world. There's too much going on. It's urgent and it calls on every one of our consciences. But nonetheless, the gospel, the letter writers of the early church, the prophets of old encouraged us to be patient. Not to merely wait for God's intervention, but to participate in the ways that God has already intervened. We are rightfully impatient with the world, with God, and even with ourselves. But we don't let that make us apathetic. We've decided that if we can't find the middle, then we will err on the side of graceful, faithful action that lays the highway in our own souls and in the streets of this world for God to intervene. Patient people do not merely wait. They prepare. They embrace and participate God's power in their lives and in the life of the world. We stand on the mountaintop, on cliffs of insanity, and tell the world that we hate